Well, hello there. My name is Beth Gaff, and I'm the Media Literacy Coordinator here at the Peabody Public Library. And first off, I want to let you know that this class is set up to go at your pace, which means that you can go as fast as you want, as slow as you want, zoom through it, take your time, however you want, works just fine. And actually, throughout the classes, I'm going to be asking you to minimize and go and do some activities. So either way, you're going to be getting some definite breaks that will be needed. Also want to let you know that throughout this class, if you are taking advantage of the Computer Class Plus incentive program, that you will be hearing your code and get with me to let me know what that code is so I can get you counted for this class to get you on your way to prizes. If you're not familiar with that program, please get in contact with me so I can give you the information needed. We don't want anybody to miss out on the great prizes and opportunities available to them for taking these computer classes. So without any further ado, I want to welcome you to Microsoft Excel Basic. Just like any other class, you're going to hear some terminology as we go through today, and I want you to be aware of what you are hearing. So the next couple of slides just kind of tell you a little bit about the terminology that is involved with Excel. An active cell, this is a cell that is current and ready to receive information. A cell is the intersection of row and columns in a worksheet. A cell address is the combination of a column letter and a number of a cell. The clipboard is a storage area shared by all Office programs where cut or copied items are stored. Data, this is information that is entered in a cell. File is a collection of data stored in one unit, identified by a file name. It can be a document, a picture, an audio, or a video stream, data library, application, or other types of collection of data. A formula bar displays data on the formula being entered into a cell. Group, this is a set of buttons on a tab that all relate to the same type of object or task. A title bar displays the Excel file name, the bar at the top of the screen that displays the name of the current window. And the window controls are buttons to minimize, maximize, or restore down this window and to close a program. Some other terminology you may hear throughout the class. Help, this is an option used when you're unable to find what you're looking for. A name box, this field displays the name of the active cell on the worksheet. Office button, this displays a list of commands related to things you can do with a document, such as opening, saving, printing, or sharing. Page layout, this tab allows you to change the orientation of your workbook and how you want your page to look. Quick Access Toolbar is a place where frequently used commands are stored. Your ribbon is part of the MOS interface containing a set of tabs which hold common groups. Your Sheet tab is a small tab at the bottom of the worksheet that allows you to move from one worksheet to another within the same workbook. A Spreadsheet or a Sheet tab is a grid that organizes data into columns and rows. Workbook is an Excel file that contains worksheets, and a worksheet is a document in Excel workbook that can contain data, formulas, tables, charts, and other objects. As we go through Microsoft Excel, you're going to probably want to make sure that you understand the parts of Excel. And this page here just kind of shows you some of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So for example, just starting from left to right, you have the Select All button, you have the name box, the title bar, the active cell, the formula bar, Ask a Question, Minimize button, Maximize Restore button, Close button, Close Window button, Menu bar, Standard toolbar, Reviewing toolbar, Formatting toolbar, Tab scrolling buttons, Sheet tabs, Status bar, Worksheet, Scroll bars, and Task pane. As we do the class today, you're going to be hearing a lot of these terms, and we're actually going to be working with most of the items listed within this page. So becoming very familiar with this would be a very good idea so that you have a better understanding of the parts of Microsoft Excel. Just like any of the other Microsoft Office programs that we have worked with, if you've taken the Microsoft Word Basic and the Microsoft Word Intermediate, this isn't any different than that as far as how you can start it. I have the two most common ways to start Microsoft Excel in front of you here on this slide. One way that you can actually start Excel, and there is a picture there to your left, is by pushing your Start button in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. And by doing that, you're going to get a menu that comes up. When you get that menu, sometimes if you've been in Excel already, it may be just in that menu, and that's indicated to you by number 1 and it's circled. If it isn't in that menu, then you can go to the All Programs, and you can click on Microsoft Office and then Microsoft Excel, and that should get you right in. Another way that you can get in is just by using the Microsoft Excel icon that might already be on your desktop in either a Microsoft Office folder, or you may have separated them out like shown in that picture to the left, indicated by number 2, where all the icons are there for you. So then you can just double click on Microsoft Excel and it takes you right in. You may also have shortcuts that are at the bottom of your desktop, and you could add Excel to that, or you may already have it, and that's indicated to you by number 3 there to the left on that picture, and you can just push that and that would get you in as well. So right now I'd like you to take a moment and go ahead and locate your Microsoft Excel or Microsoft Office icon and get yourself into Microsoft Excel. And either do that by just double clicking on the icon you may have already in front of you, or you can do it by going to that Start menu, All Programs, Microsoft Office to Microsoft Excel, and get in that way. So go ahead and take a moment right now, pause this video, and go ahead and get yourself into Microsoft Excel. Every single time you start Excel, you are by default creating a new blank workbook. So just by clicking on the icon that you saw in the slide before this and opening Excel, you are automatically just now created yourself a workbook. That's it. It's open, it's ready to go for you to input your data. Now, the name of your workbook has a default name, and they're going to name it Book 1. So until you save the workbook to a different name, it's going to automatically say Book 1 and then Microsoft Excel. So we can see in that first picture to the left, and I have it circled in orange for you, that you can actually see the Book 1 and then Microsoft Excel. So until we save that feature, it's going to automatically default you to Book 1. Now once you save it and you're done entering your data, then you can rename it to something else. The workbook is like an outer shell of your spreadsheet, and all the contents inside of that is what is your worksheet. And all of those little squares that you see on the workbook are actually all cells. So when you start Excel, you should first see a blue bar at the very top of your screen. This is called your title bar, and that's circled for you in the orange. The title bar is where you will see the name of your workbook once you have saved it, or even by the default that's already there. And if you're familiar with Windows, you will notice to the right of the title bar, you also have the minimize, restore, and the close. I'm just telling you about the different kinds of features that are within this workbook, and that is one of them, and that's going to be that minimize, where you can minimize your sheet, you can maximize it, you can restore it. But just by creating a workbook and opening up Excel, you have automatically done that, and it's going to show you as a Book 1, and it's going to show you as that it is in Microsoft Excel. So let's say that you wanted to have more than one workbook up at a time. Let's say that you are a teacher, and the Book 1 that we see there indicated to the left, that's actually going to be your math class. And let's say that you need to create another one because you're teaching an English class now as well. So the way that you would create another workbook is by going to your File or your Office button, and that's indicated to you to the right picture that's behind everything. And once you click that, you're going to get a menu. When you get that menu, you would go down to where it says New, and then you would click on blank workbook. When you click on that blank workbook, it's going to pull up another workbook. And since you already have one open as default that says Book 1, then this means that your next workbook that would come up by default would say Book 2. So if you created another one, it would come up by default and say Book 3. This is how you would separate them so you have a better understanding. So why don't you right now go ahead and minimize this video. If you haven't opened Excel and created yourself a workbook, go ahead and do that by clicking on your icon, and just by clicking on it, you've automatically created yourself a workbook, and it will come up and say Book 1. Now, I would like for you to go ahead and create yourself another workbook so you actually have two of them up at one time. Now, you won't physically see them both at one time, but your icon will actually be split a little, so you'll be able to see at the bottom that there's two of them. So you could switch between them. And you would hit that Office button, and you would go down to New, hit Blank Workbook, and it's going to pull up that second workbook. So go ahead and minimize this now, and create yourself a Book 1, and create yourself a Book 2. Now that you're a little bit familiar with Excel and its terminology and the parts and how you can get in there and actually create yourself a workbook, or maybe even a few workbooks, we're going to talk about worksheets now. And all workbooks must contain at least one worksheet. The maximum number of worksheets a workbook can contain is only limited by the available memory that you have on your computer. And as a default, Excel places 3 blank worksheets in front of you. Each one of these has a default name: Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3 at the bottom. So by default, all worksheets are identical in that they contain rows, columns, and cells. So you can see that very first picture there to the left. I actually have it blocked in red to show you Sheet 1, Sheet 2, and Sheet 3. And that is by default. And we can still see up there in the title bar where we are on Book 1 in Microsoft Excel, which we've already learned about that. So all worksheets all of them contain 256 columns and 65,536 rows. Each separate rectangle within the worksheet is called a cell. And you can see that that cell there on A1 is actually blocked in, and each time you click on a different cell, it will block itself in like that. You will notice that there's letters across the top of your worksheet. These are the names of the columns, and they go from A through IV, and the numbers down the left-hand side of your sheet on the graph paper symbolize your row headings, and they go from 1 through 65,536. So if you needed to insert more worksheets, you can do this 2 ways. The first way would be to go to the Insert tab, and I have it circled in that neon blue color, your Insert tab, and by pushing that you could go down and it would say Worksheet. So it would create one that way. Another way is just to right click on another sheet down there at the bottom and select Insert and then select Worksheet, and that would create another one. And by creating another one, this would label it Sheet 4 and so on. So if you keep adding the sheets, they're going to say Sheet 4, Sheet 5, Sheet 6, and so forth. So let's say that once you've added some worksheets, you realize that you really just don't need that many. You can actually delete them, and there's 2 common ways to delete them. The first way would be just to right-click on the worksheet that you're not wanting, and by doing that right-click, we're going to be prompted to a menu. Anytime you right-click on something in any kind of program, internet, what have you, you're automatically going to get some type of a menu that comes up. When that menu comes up, you could just click Delete. Once you hit Delete, that worksheet is going to go away. Another way would be to go up to your Edit button, and you could actually click Delete from there, and Microsoft Excel actually has a Delete button as well. So you can just push that too, and it will take away those worksheets for you. So whichever method you want to use, Excel will always display a warning message letting you know that the deletion cannot be undone. So it's basically just confirming with you, making sure that this is not something that you didn't mean to do or that you meant to do. So, renaming these worksheets is done exactly the same way, and the best way to rename your worksheet is by right-clicking on your sheet itself. And when you do that, you see that middle picture there. You're going to get a menu, because anytime that we right-click on something, we're going to get some kind of a menu. And you can click Rename, and that third picture there shows you, it will highlight it, and you can either hit backspace and take it all out, or you can just begin to type. As long as it's highlighted and you begin to type, that sheet 1 is going to go away, and you can enter in what you would like at that point. Now keep in mind that when you're renaming a worksheet, that you cannot exceed more than 31 characters, and it can't contain any special characters. So it has to be very simple, and the name cannot be the same as another worksheet that's in the workbook. So you can't have 2 of them at the same time. So why don't you right now go ahead and minimize the video and open up Excel if you haven't done so. Take a look and look at the 3 sheets that are available to you. I want you to rename one of your worksheets, and I also want you to add yourself another worksheet. And remember, we can do this the easiest way by just right-clicking on the sheet itself, and we can hit Insert Workbook, Worksheet, and you're going to get a new worksheet. And the same concept, if we right-click, we can click Rename, and then we can type in whatever we want our sheet to say. So going back to our teacher method, if this was our workbook for our math class, we may want to put on each one of those sheets our assignments or what we're expecting from the children. So for my math workbook, I may put in there that this is exercise 24, pages 5 to 7, and so forth. So go ahead right now, and I want you to rename a worksheet, and I want you to add yourself a new worksheet. Go ahead, give it a try. Okay, so now I want to talk to you a little bit on how you can move these worksheets, copy these worksheets, and rename these worksheets. At times, we may need or wish to move a worksheet to another position in the workbook, or we may even want to transfer it over to another workbook that we are working on. So let's say that you just want to copy your worksheet. The best way to do that would be to select the sheet that you want to copy, and then you would left-click on the Name tab, and while holding down the Control key, drag it to one side and then release. That's one way to copy all your information over. If we don't want to copy, but rather we just want to move the entire worksheet to another position in the workbook, we can simply just left-click on the Worksheet Name tab, then holding down the mouse button, drag it to its new position, and let it go. The other method is to use the Move or the Copy dialog box, and this can be accessed 2 ways. And as you can see, I have that picture in front of you in the middle. By right-clicking on the worksheet tab name that you would want to move, you would then select Move or Copy. And you can see that indicated by the arrow pointing to it, and they've just right-clicked on that Sales 2010, and they've pushed Move or Copy. Another way would be to go to your Edit button, tab, and then move or copy the sheet. It makes no difference which method you use, and you will see this dialog box come up, and it'll say To Box. And we can see that in the center. It says Move or Copy, Move Selected Sheets, and it says the To Box. The To Box, this is a box with a small drop arrow to the right. The section in this box will determine where our sheet will be moved or copied to. The default name in this box will be the active workbook name, the current workbook that you are in. There will also always be another choice if we click the drop arrow. This is a new book. If we choose this option, Excel will automatically create a new workbook for the sheet to be moved or copied to. Within this box will also be the names of any other open workbooks that you may have open. So directly below the To box, we see that there's a box there that says Before Sheet. And this Before Sheet button, this is our section in which we decide which position our sheet will be moved or copied to. And then last of all, it's to create a copy checkbox. If we check this box, Excel will create a copy of our moved worksheet. In other words, our original sheet will remain where it is, and a copy of it will be moved to our chosen location. If we leave it unchecked, which is by default, it is automatically unchecked, the worksheet will be moved and not copied. The best way, as with most of Excel, is to jump straight in and try out different options. You cannot do any harm and you can't mess up anything by doing this. So let's say that we want to rename our worksheet. So we would right click on our worksheet that we want to rename, and we would actually push rename, and I have it circled in red for you. By right clicking we get a menu and we would hit rename, and in this situation they renamed their worksheet Sales 2010. Now let's say that I want to move my worksheet from possibly one workbook to another. I could do this by right clicking, push move or copy, and I'm going to get that box that we've been talking about that comes up. And I can make my selections by my drop down menu. So I can actually drop down to book, and that'll tell me where I want to put it. And then maybe I just want to move my sheets around. And that's where that before sheet down below comes. Now if I wanted to create a copy of it, then I would want to check that at the same time. But by default, it's not automatically checked, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay? So right now, go ahead and minimize this video. And again, let's try to rename one of our worksheets and just kind of move it around. Don't worry about whether you're going to mess anything up, because remember, anything you do in Excel up to this point has not been saved, so it is not permanent, and you're not hurting anything by just playing around with Microsoft Excel. So let's do that. Let's just minimize this and just kind of play around with our right click with our sheets and using some of the features that we've talked about. Go ahead, give it a try. I promise you, you can't hurt anything. Okay, so that was pretty fun, being able to move around a worksheet, copy a worksheet, and rename a worksheet. We're now going to move on and we're going to talk about cells. Cells are the very backbone of Excel. On each worksheet there are 16,777,216 cells. These are all divided into 65,536 rows and 256 columns, as I mentioned to you earlier. The number of rows and columns in a worksheet are fixed, which means we cannot add more and we cannot take any away. So as a consequence, the number of cells are also fixed. This should never become a problem, as we can just add a lot of worksheets if we need to, each with 16,777,216 cells. So this should give us plenty of room. A cell is defined as the intersection of where a column and a row meet, just like the coordinates on a road map. The method that Excel uses to reference these cells as default is called the A1 style reference. When we refer to a particular cell, we use its cell address or its location to nominate the cell. The method Excel uses to reference cells is very simple but highly effective, often referred to as the grid pattern method, exactly the same as a road map. So if you click in cell C6, it should be defined as your active cell, or the cell in which you are clicked in, by the border of the cell or the rectangle being different in some way, either bolded or maybe it's a different color. So as we can see in the screen in front of us, the worksheet that we have up there, they have just randomly pushed on something and that automatically bolds it in. It makes it an active cell, and this one in that particular situation is E10. So if you go to column C, row 6, like you were asked to do, then you would see that that would be bolded in. Now have a look at the column heading letter. it should be defined in some way. It's either bolded or it's highlighted in a color. It may even look pushed in like a button. So we can see in the picture in front of us that E looks slightly different than the rest, and so does the 10. Now look at the row number on the left of your screen, which should also be defined in some way. This is telling you your cell reference. Now look above the column heading A, and you will see the reference C6 in what is known as the name box. And I have indicated our name box with a circle around it in which it says E10. That is where our active cell was clicked, therefore that is our active cell. In the situation above that we selected C6, we only selected one cell. We can select many more cells at a time if we wish. When we do so, we have selected what is now known as a range of cells. A range can be one cell or it can be many cells. To select a range of cells, we simply select any one cell, position the cursor so a cross appears, then holding down our left mouse button, drag in the direction we wish to select. It is important to note that here that although we have more than one cell selected, a range, there is only one active cell, and this will always be the first cell we selected. There is no limit to the number of cells we can select on a worksheet. So if we decided that we wanted to select all of the cells on our worksheet, we could either push Ctrl+A or the Select All button, which this is the empty gray rectangle in the upper left corner of your worksheet where the row and column headings meet. We can also select entire columns or rows by simply left-clicking on the column letter or row number. We mentioned above while looking at toolbars that there is another shortcut menu in Excel, the right-click menu, and we've been talking about that so far quite a bit. The right-click menu is also known as the context-sensitive menu. This means that it will display options that are sensitive to the area in which you are clicked in. To see this, simply click on any cell and right-click. You will see a list of common options or a menu available in the area you are clicked in. We won't go into any of these details at this stage, but we most certainly will later on when you're in the intermediate class. You'll be using a lot of the right-clicking. So getting familiar with right-click is very, very important. Because while we are right-clicking, you will notice as we get into Excel deeper that it has many of these right-click menus. As stated above, the menu that we are presented with is wholly dependent on the area of Excel we are in at that time. So, for example, we have this here boxed in. We've just clicked on something random and that's just one cell. By left clicking in there and dragging it, and we can see that to the right, we have now created a range. Okay? So as you can see, and I've actually circled it in that right picture, you can see a little bit more clearly what is actually the active cell. And A1 in this situation is our active cell because that's the first cell that we clicked on when we began this. So why don't you take a moment now and go ahead and minimize this slide and get yourself a range and get familiar with where exactly your active box is. Before we clicked on C6, just kind of click in the different boxes and keep a hold of that left button on your mouse and just kind of drag it across, and you're going to see some changes. So go ahead and take a time now to just explore a little bit with the cells within Excel. Okay, so now that you're a little bit more familiar with cells and how the cells work and what an active cell is and how we can indicate what cell we're actually in and what cell we started with and how we can create a range, now we need to talk about how we can move around our worksheet a little bit. There are many ways that we can move around a worksheet. At the far right of your worksheet window, this is what is known as your vertical scroll bar, and I have those circled for you. with red. This bar has an upward pointing arrow at the top of it and a downward pointing arrow at the bottom of it. You can vertically scroll up or down your worksheet in any one of the common following ways. You can just place your left mouse on the arrows themselves and move them around, as well as the ones underneath. You can select any cell and then drag down. You may notice that doing this will display a small yellow box that informs you of how many rows you have selected and how many columns. This will only appear after the active cell has scrolled from view. You can also do the same by selecting any cell and holding down the down arrow on your keyboard while holding down your shift key. You can also hold your left mouse button down and drag the gray sliding button between the black upward and the downward arrow. Notice when you select the last option of the yellow box in the row, it will appear. This is just because you will not move the location until you release the button. You can also use your arrows on your keyboard, which will allow you to move up cells, move down cells, move across cells, and things to that effect. I also have in the very center of it where that name box that we've been talking about. So every time you click in a cell, you are actually going to see that rectangle, and that's the one we started with, so the D3 would be the one positioned there. So even if you did arrange and you started with D3 and you left clicked and you drug it across, D3 would still be in the name box because that's where we started from. So we can use our page up and our page down on our keyboards. We can use our tab buttons to get us from one square or one cell to the other cell. We can use our normal arrow buttons. We can just use our mouse and click on them randomly. So just take a moment right now and use these different features. Use your tab button, use your arrow buttons, use your scroll bars. Make sure you understand and can identify what cell you're in and where it's named. And then, of course, if at any time you are in this so deeply and you're like, how do I just get back to A1 where I started? If you push Control and then Home, it's going to take you right back up to the A1 square. Okay? So it's going to take you right back to where you started from. So again, no worries, you don't have to worry about messing anything up or making any errors or any problems, because you can always hit the Control Home and it's going to take you right back to where you started. So go ahead and get in Excel now if you don't have it up right now, and just use your different features to get you moving about in a worksheet that's within a workbook in Excel. Give it a try. If you have a computer class pass, your secret code is Excel Basic. So what you would do now is you would let me know what the code is so I can get you marked down for watching this streamed video. Wow, we have learned a lot of information about Excel and how to get in there and how to move around and what cells are and whatever, all these different meanings, and it is a lot of information, but the overall reason for Excel is to be able to enter in data, whether it's basic data or elaborate data. It doesn't really matter, but that's what Excel is really for, is for the data purposes of it. And we're not going to be doing any data entry in this particular class. More of that happens in the intermediate class, if you would take that class. But I do want to touch base a little bit about the basic data and just kind of a review of everything that we have learned up to this point. The slide that you see in front of you actually is just kind of a review of things that we have already kind of covered and talked about, and maybe something slightly new. The red indicated circles are letting you know that that is an active cell down there in I-19, and we know that because it's bordered in a black border. Anytime that we have an active cell, anytime we click into a cell, it makes it an active cell. And when that happens, it comes up into the name box, which is that other red circle. And we've already learned about that up to this point, and that lets us know where exactly our active cell is. And in this particular situation, our active cell is in I-19. Now that purple circle around there is actually our formula bar, and what that does is that allows us to enter our data. we can either enter our data by clicking on the box or the cell that we want the data in and just typing it directly into that box, or we can click on the active cell that we want the data in, and we can actually type it up in that formula bar that's circled in the purple. So you actually have two ways that you can enter in data when you're entering in the data in Excel. So in this particular situation, we would try both ways. So really what I want you to do now is go ahead and just stop the video, pause the video, minimize the video, and get into Excel if you're not already in there, and just kind of enter some basic data. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate like this picture shows you. This is just an example of something you can do, but try the different columns, enter in some amounts, and do that for at least 4 or 5 rows. Some different kind of, and you may even want to copy some of the information that is in front of you. And I'm asking you to enter in numbers because on the next slides we're going to actually do something with this. So go ahead now and just pause this video and just kind of play around with the different cells by pushing on them and noticing the name box, the changes, and pushing on one and entering the data directly into the box, and then pushing on another one and entering it into that formula bar that is located above the worksheet. So go ahead now and take time to do that. Okay, so now that you might have a little bit of data entered, and I said just like the first 4 or 5 rows, maybe a few columns of something with some numbers, now we can actually start to begin to do something with that. And again, we're going to touch a lot more on this in the intermediate class, but I do want to talk briefly about it in case you just kind of want to play around with this a little bit. And we're going to use the sorting feature that is located in the upper right corner of Microsoft Excel for you. And what you'll do now is you will just do that range like we'd done earlier, where you left clicked on the cell that you want to start with and you just drag your mouse and you're going to highlight all of the area of data that you just put in. And then if you go in that upper right hand corner, you're actually going to see a button that says sort or filter, and you're going to push that button. When you push that button, you're going to actually get a menu that comes down to ask you how you want to sort it. When we sort it with letters, like our first column in this particular situation is names of something, it's going to pick up whatever's in that active cell first. And in this one, we can see the active cell is actually the white box that isn't shaded blue when we did our range, because that's where we started from. So that's our active cell, and once I hit that sort, then it's going to want to sort that by either alphabetical A to Z, or it's going to want to sort it from Z to A. And you can even get a fancy if you want to and go into that custom sort and kind of check that out and see some things you might want to do. But because we started our active cell in letters, then our sort comes up as letters, meaning we can sort it from A to Z, or we can sort it from Z to A. Had we highlighted the millions column in this situation with the numbers, we would have gotten different options. And you should try that as well. The sorting would be different than if we had started, because at that point, our active cell would actually be in that other box, which is that 8.82 million, because that's where we would have started and we would have drug it across that way. We would have gotten different options. So take time now and go ahead and pause this video and just try playing around with that sort and filter button. Highlight, enter some more data if you want to, some more numbers, and just highlight that area. And we do that again by clicking in our active cell and then just dragging it. Don't let go until you're done. So you would left click on one of the cells and just pull it across until the area that you want is completed, and then hit that sort and filter and see what you get, and play around with the custom filter too. You can't hurt anything at this point, so just have some fun. Okay, so now that brings us to the point where, what if we want to insert some more rows or columns? Or what if we want to delete some of those rows and columns that we don't need anymore? So this would be a good example if you are entering in data, and let's look at that bottom right picture where they have a big highlight, and it shows that our active cell is July 16th, because that's the first thing they clicked on, and and drug across. Now we may decide that we want to actually insert another one. There in that picture it says date, product, quantity, cost, amount. That's what each one of those columns means. But what if I wanted to add one in there that said wholesale cost or total amount or something to that effect, where I just want another column in between one of my other columns? Okay. The first way I would do that, and this is where our right click is going to come in very handy, is I would click on the column that I want my row to be in front of. So if I want my wholesale cost to be in front of my cost, then I would click on D in that situation, which would highlight the entire column. And then I would right click, and there's an option there that says Insert. I would hit Insert, and lo and behold, I would have a new column, and it would be labeled D. Okay? So we would do that same thing for deleting them. You would just click on the column that you don't want there anymore, and then you would right click, because that whole column is going to light up in a blue. Then you're going to right click, and you're going to get that menu option like we see in picture 1 there, and you're going to hit delete, and it's going to go away. It's not going to be there anymore. So go ahead right now, and there's actually another way that you can do it. And the bottom picture, we see the big red circle that's around Insert, Delete, Format. That's the same location that you can insert your worksheets, insert your columns, insert your rows, because rows are done exactly the same way. If I want to add a row, that picture to the right with the red arrow pointing to the 4, by clicking on that 4, I'm highlighting the entire row. I can right click and I can insert another row, or I could delete that row that I'm in. So go ahead right now and just kind of play around with inserting rows and inserting columns by pushing on the columns, right clicking and inserting and deleting, and the same things with the rows. Okay, I just want to take another moment and just kind of go over the inserting columns and rows with you. Here I've got a picture at the top, and this is actually the column that we're going to insert, and I have a blue arrow indicating that. And then to the right there's a picture under the words that kind of shows you what I'm talking about. So if we click on C and then we right click, we're going to get a menu, and that's what that menu is on the right hand side picture underneath the words that I have there, the little statement I have. And once we right click, then we can insert or we can delete at that point, and we can see that indicated there. And then we also have the rows section. So this works with your columns and this works with your rows. So again, if you would like to play around with this a little bit more, go ahead and pause this video at this time and just practice inserting and deleting the rows a little bit more. So I'm just elaborating a little bit more on what I told you beforehand, and just kind of showing you that highlighted column and the highlighted rows, and how by right clicking we can get that menu up to do the command that we would like Excel to do for us. So go ahead now and take another moment and just kind of play around with inserting and deleting columns and rows. Okay, so we've come time now where we have done everything that we want to do to our workbook and our worksheets, and we are ready to save them. So there's actually 2 different kinds of saving. And one way is, first off, if we remember correctly, that by default, Excel makes our workbooks labeled for us. So for instance, we had book 1, book 2. Well, this is where we're going to change that now. Okay, so if you go up to your Office button or your File button and you push that, you're going to get that menu coming down like we did when we added a new workbook. Okay, well, instead of hitting New this time, we're actually going to hit Save As. The difference between Save and Save As is that Save As is telling the computer I have created a workbook, but I don't have a name for it yet, and I need to find a location for it, so I need to save it as something. Whereas the Save button allows us to go in and make corrections to our already saved workbooks, and then we have the option of just pushing that and it automatically saves it. And we actually have that little save icon in the upper left-hand corner of our Excel workbook. So if you would go in and reopen it and edit something, then you could just push that directly, and you wouldn't have to push the Office button or the File button to get this to do it. You could just push it. But because this is a new one and we've never saved it before, we're going to save it as something. So we would hit that Office button, the File button, and we would come down and we would click Save As. Now when we hit Save As, we're going to get that box to the right that comes up. And that's an automatic default that Microsoft Office uses is My Documents. So anytime you save something through Microsoft Office, whether it's Word, Access, PowerPoint, whatever it may be, it's automatically going to save it in Your Documents, and it's labeled My Documents. So there is where you can go down below and see how that has Book 2 highlighted, and I've got it circled there for you. It has Book 2 highlighted. You would just type in whatever you want your workbook to be called. And earlier we were talking about school, so you may want to label that particular workbook your math class for 2014. Okay? Now, when we want to come back to that later, we would find that saved workbook in My Documents. So you would need to go into My Documents and open it up, and you would see it in there. And by double clicking it, it's going to open it up, and now you would be able to go in and edit anything to it that you would need to edit. And then you could either save it alone the way it was because you don't want to do anything else to it, or you could decide that you wanted to keep your original and you want this one as well. So you could rename it if you wanted to, and then you would have the original School 2014 and then an edited version of School 2014. So go ahead and take a moment and save your workbook, save it as something, and then maybe even go in and try to edit it and just save it directly. You don't have to push that Save As and the Office button to resave it after an edit. You only have to do this when it's fresh, new, and it's never been saved before. So go ahead right now and pause this video and save your workbook. Okay, one last thing that I'd like to talk about, and then we're going to conclude the class, is how you can close a workbook in Excel. And there's actually a few ways that you can do this. When you have Excel open, and we see that to the left, it's just a normal spreadsheet in a workbook with worksheets in it. It actually shows you that to close Excel, you would need to hit that big red box in the upper right-hand corner. If I just want to close my spreadsheet, then I would use the box down below. And you can give that a try here in a minute. Another way that you can close Excel is by hitting File and then Close, or File and then Exit. And we see that to the right. Normally when we close a workbook that we've been working on, we're going to automatically get that box like we saw before to save it as something. And at that point it would be up to you on whether you would want to save your workbook as something, or if you would just want to not save it and just be done with it. So why don't you take time right now and just kind of play around with closing your Excel with the various ways, and also closing a spreadsheet so you can see how it looks and what effects that it has on Excel. Go ahead right now and just give that a try. Well, I want to congratulate you because you've completed Microsoft Excel Basic, and you should be very, very proud of yourself. It took a lot for you to sit here and listen to me go on and on about Excel, and by the end of this, if you've learned something, then I've completely done my job the way I'm supposed to. And I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that you'll be looking for more classes being offered. Intermediate should be also uploaded, so you should also be able to get a hold of that, and it goes even further into Excel. This was very basic, whereas Intermediate's going to go up a little bit more of a step for you. If you have any questions about this class, you can always contact me here at the Peabody Public Library. I do have an email address that I've set up for just the students to be able to email and ask questions about classes and so forth. And again, I want to thank you for being a part of Microsoft Excel, and congratulations for your completion. The information that was provided within this class, as well as pictures, were provided by the following websites.